Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jess Marshall here. I'm a real estate investor and a restoration contractor and a rugby enthusiast. And today on my podcast, I've invited a local guy by the name of Doug Phillips, who I've known for years. He's with DFW Investment Lending. He's going to come in. He's going to talk to us about property investing. Are you interested in flipping houses or interested in building your rental portfolio? Doug's got a wealth of information to share with us today. I've got a list of questions for him, and I'm not sure where the conversation is going to take us, but Doug's a great guy. He brings value to every conversation I've ever had with him and every conversation he's had with anybody who's ever invested with him. He's the type of guy who he really teams up with his investors, creates a partnership, sees it through to the end, and he's obsessed with the success of his investors. I'm excited for the conversation. Please like, subscribe, and enjoy. What's up, man? Good to see you.
How are you?
Good, man. It's been too long.
It has. It has.
This is Doug with DFW Investment Lending.
Yep.
How long have we known each other? 3 years?
At least.
Yeah, maybe more like three and a half.
Yeah, I'm thinking at least 3.5.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, we talked for a long time before we did our first deal.
That's true.
Long time.
That's
that
true.
was a complex deal to put together.
Yep. And I don't even remember how we met, actually.
It was through another
Another
a
investor.
gal who's used you in the past.
Okay.
Used y'all in the past, Monica.
Yep. I remember
Yep.
Monica.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I met with her. I had lunch with her 2-3 weeks ago.
She's a character.
Monica's
In
great.
a good way.
Yeah, Monica takes no prisoners. I love it.
Yes.
We need more Monicas in this world.
I haven't talked to her in a long time. I need to call her. And
You
say
should. You should say I just sat down with Jess and then just see what she texts back. Fuck that guy. No, she wouldn't say that.
No, I don't think she would either.
So how have things been, man?
Good. Good. Staying busy. You know, we have multifaceted services there at the office, so it's been, you know, the lending side's been better in years past for sure.
Really?
Yeah, 19 was a little rough for a lot of us lenders. We've been pretty good. This early this year has been pretty strong for us, but 19 was pretty rough, and I think most of the other lenders I talked to would agree with that.
What was that attributed to?
Man, I think just I think a lot of the eager beavers that were early on that didn't know what they were doing kind of came in the market and got stung. I think that also the extreme activity causes the market to artificially increase for the investor buyers, because the sellers, they get wind of it, and all of a sudden their houses are worth more because all the investors are paying too much, and it kind of builds itself. And this is not new to the market. This happened back in the 90s. You know, Frank and I were flipping houses back in the mid 90s and had the exact same thing happen back then. It just kind of comes and goes. There's just this cyclical movement of available properties to remodel.
Sure.
And you know, the supply it goes up and down.
Yeah. You're not, what are you seeing, any ebbs and flows like drastically since 117 days ago or whenever this whole COVID thing's kind of started?
No, I think you'd probably get mixed reactions if you ask people. My perception that in most of the markets I'm seeing, what's going on is I think a lot of people took their houses off the market when the whole COVID scare started. And that basically caused a greater lack of supply. And when basic economics which is what I preach all the time when I'm talking and telling people about investing, it's just economics, right? It's supply and it's demand, and it's substitution. Those are the principles that run all this in a sense. And when you have a lack of supply and you still have the demand, prices go up. When you have a lack of supply, owner occupants that would rather buy a nicer house may just take something that they can get that needs work. You know, so the investors have more competition on, you know, from the owner occupants on what would have been an investment house maybe a year and a half ago might not be now, let's say. Now you still have the elements of a distressed property that keep it in the investor realm, and these would be things like foundation repairs, roof repairs, things like that would keep a normal owner-occupant borrower from doing a conventional loan. That usually keeps the property in the investor realm.
Gotcha. How often are you meeting or introduced to someone who's never flipped a house before? they're super interested in it because they flipped on HGTV and saw Chip and JoJo on there, and
it happens all the time.
Raring to go. So when you meet them, how much are you educating them before you're, talking deals?
Most of the education for them typically happens at the very beginning. It happens with, this is how the loan process works. This is what hard money means. This is why you should do it. This is why you shouldn't do it. Those sorts of things. Then once they get beyond okay, cool, I like what you're telling me. You talk to me a lot more than other people. This makes sense. I want to go with you. Then they get to, okay, look at this deal I'm interested in. And I'll look at it and say, well, yeah, but that's not a deal. So then I have to kind of get into it and say, look, these are the numbers.
Done that.
Yeah. So, and that's okay. That's, no one walks into this thing knowing what they're doing. Some people have an agent, a real estate agent, that they think is helping them, and sometimes those agents are pretty bullish on values that aren't really there, and that sort of thing. So there's always a different story to every little mix. But yeah, there's a lot of education that takes place. I would stop short of saying that we mentor, or I'm a mentor, but the truth is, I think a lot of my clients would probably say that's kind of the relationship, simply because we end up talking about so much of that stuff, and it comes into play.
When you meet someone who's new and they're raring to go, and I found this house and I worked so hard to find it, but then the values don't line up, or the appraisal is not going to support the buy or the sell values.
Right.
What do you recommend to them as an approach for finding, an acceptable prospect?
Man, I throw ideas out there, but generally I don't have there's nothing new under the sun, as they say, right? So it's the same stuff. Try flyers, try this, try that. A lot of the newest investors, they're typically hooked up with one of the large volume wholesalers that does the big mail outs. And I kind of tell them, that there are deals to be had in those ways, but it's important to have a grasp of construction costs in those situations, and obviously values too. A lot of times those wholesalers have a fairly good grip on the value. Not always, but most of the time. Because I think everyone can generally look at it and say, okay, the ARV is going to be this about.
Break down, what's ARV?
I'm sorry, ARV, as some people call it, after repaired value or as repaired value. It's the end result, what you're going to sell a house for once you're done fixing it up. Mm-hmm. And then, so that part of it is generally kind of stable and usually relatively correct. Where I see a lot of the discrepancy on the major volume wholesalers is they typically severely undercut the anticipated repair costs. There's two elements to any deal. You got a purchase price and you got a repair cost, and those two things have to work together to get to a profitable deal.
Well, you can either lower the repair costs or you lower the sale price to make it a better deal. Well, in these cases, I see a lot of times the repair budgets just aren't realistic. And so that's how they jump into something thinking it's a great deal, but they don't have a good grasp of the repairs. And that typically happens to the new guys because they haven't been schooled by, oh, by the way, this is going to cost you, and they trust a repair bid given to them by the seller saying, oh, here, we got a guy that's willing to do this work for this amount of money. And you're like, what are you thinking?
Where are you stealing that material from?
Well, it's, yeah.
Yeah. How often are you, really breaking it down for somebody that, hey, I don't know where this number came from, this remodel number came from, but I strongly do not believe that this dwelling can be improved for this price to sell it for this price.
Yeah. Well, it just starts with, look, here's basic costs, right? You know that it's going to cost this. You know it's going to cost this. And you start adding up. But honestly, I think a lot of times they don't even sit down with a piece of paper and just simply write down everything and then add it. Right. They don't think about that. They don't factor in that kind of stuff. Or a lot of times they don't factor in the other costs, what we call the soft costs, the lending, the interest carry, the turning the utilities on, the insurance, the other things, the paying the agent at the back end to sell it, the title fees at the back end to sell it. There's a lot of soft costs that a lot of investors it's funny because when you see these HGTV shows, oh, I paid this for it, I spent this on it, this is how much I made. Well, No, but that's, no one thinks about it. It's entertainment, right? It's television. It's Fantasyland.
Apparently, yeah. It's crazy. Some of the things that they would just be better served to take all the numbers down off the screen. I think it would be better entertainment.
I don't even know why they get into it, because I think most people are interested in seeing what they do anyway.
I agree with you. They're mostly into what that backsplash tile blend is going to look like.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that the market in Waco is so much different than the market in Dallas. It's really not, but the prices I see, I'm like, I can't watch this anymore. I'm sorry.
It's nuts. Well, you go out to Greenville. Yeah. We were just talking about Greenville. You go out to Greenville, the price, you can buy an amazing looking house for a fraction of what it costs in Dallas. Problem is you can't sell it, but for a fraction of the cost of what you can sell in Dallas,
Right.
But so it's just, you go to these different markets, and if they're far enough away, they're not necessarily affected by the gravity of a large metropolitan area like Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah, that's very true. If you just bumped into a guy at a bar, he didn't even know who you were. You're just sitting next to him on a bar stool, and he's talking to you, man, I hate my job. I'm really thinking I want to start flipping houses. What would you recommend to him as the way to get started? What are the first steps that you recommend? Because I see a lot of times things done out of order.
Yep.
And so if you were to put together even a handbook, say it's 10 pages long, start here, end here. Mm-hmm. What would be the way you would guide that guy through? Hey, first couple things you need to do, next couple weeks, do this, then call me.
Right. I'd say first thing is get your cash together and figure out how much cash you can comfortably lose if it was to go bad. I would then say, get your cash together, figure that out. One of the hardest things in this market currently is just finding deals. So I get a lot of calls from borrowers who they don't know at first when they call that it does take cash to do these things. You can't just, I think they stay up late at night and they see these shows on TV. Hey, you can get rich quick flipping real estate with no money of your own. Well, that's true. It can happen. It doesn't happen very much, at least from what I've seen. Of course, I'm a lender, so if it's happening like that, I'm probably not going to see it, right? But the reality of it is that for the typical investor, you're going to need some cash. You're going to need to be able to hone your skills into finding a deal. So what's entailed there is, number one is a process to find a deal, but number two is how do you figure out if it's a deal or not? So if for someone that doesn't know anything about real estate, they're going to need to get with a realtor or someone that knows what they're doing that can help them access data sources. And then maybe work with a lender like myself who actually knows about real estate as well and is willing to say, okay, here's what you need to be thinking about. I think that building your knowledge base is important. Frankly, I don't see it as much different than going to the shopping mall. You know how much money's in your wallet and you know what you want to buy. Or you research it. Hey, so-and-so sells this or so-and-so sells that. You do your research before you go to the mall, typically. I mean, sometimes you just go there and waste time, but you know what I mean. If you're out to make a decent purchase, you're going to research something, especially online these days. And then the other thing is you're not going to go to the mall without knowing I can spend this or I can spend that. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different because you just think, okay, I can afford that. On the housing, it's really no different. It's just in a bigger scale. So I think the first two things I'd say is figure out your cash. And then, I think talking to lenders early on to understand, what is a possibility is a great step towards that in the very beginning. And it can help you understand what's next. I get a lot of guys call. They realize they don't have any cash. They realize they need cash. My suggestion to them is I said, look, the hardest part of this is finding deals. Hone your craft doing that. Get something under contract, then wholesale it to someone else. You'll make a few $1,000s, put it in the bank. Go do it again, go do it again, go do it again. Pretty soon, you're going to have enough cash to do your own deal.
That's really good advice.
And you may find that, hey, I like this better than flipping.
Well, and you would have learned what I think is the hardest part of the whole process, which is finding the actual property.
Right.
And you would have, like you said, honed your craft.
I think what else you learn there, kind of by default, is how to not be greedy.
No.
Because I think greed can kill people a lot of times in this business, or any business, frankly. This is such a good deal, I can't let this go, I got to do it myself. No, that's not true. Especially if you don't have any cash. Don't give away any possible benefit from this deal just to do the deal. go ahead, move it to someone else, let them make their money. You make your money. It's a business transaction. You put it in the bank and you build towards a goal. It's like anything else.
Absolutely. And I would say that the misinformation that's out there, whether it's just in the own minds of potential investors or it's, on Reddit or wherever,
Sure.
about the differences between hard money lenders. What do you tell people? Hey, obviously they talk to you. You guys are a local outfit. You guys are invested here. You guys have family here. You're building your own futures here in this community. And there's a lot of guys from out of town who, sure. I mean, there's a lot of investors here. There's a lot of people who will take your money. How do you guide them, show them, hey, this is kind of how we're different, and this is why we're different, and these are the things you really got to watch out for?
That's exactly what I do. Even with a new client, they'll call and just want to know about the process, and hey, and I start telling them, look, here's the things you need to look out for. Here's our dog and pony show. Here's what we do. Here's our program. Okay. Now, here's the other guy's program. This is what you're going to hear when you call the next guy, which I absolutely expect you should do. Or maybe you've already talked to them. And if you hear what I'm doing, you hear what they're doing, there's a difference. Here's the difference. Here's what it means to you. Here's how you need to think about it when you think about it. And here's what you need to do to understand what's going on. There's that whole side of the lending part of it. And then I kind of move on and say, well, listen, besides the money, which you can get hard money from, sources, what we offer that I'm not familiar with another shop in town that does is that, myself and one of the other guys in the office, we're appraisers and have been in this market for 30 years. So when we look at a property, when we're doing a loan, as an example, I'm not calling some other appraiser to go tell me what the number is. I'm looking at it myself. And so I see the house from the beginning myself. So I have a relationship with that borrower from the beginning. Let's meet at the house. Let's talk about the project. I'm physically familiar with it. I didn't hire somebody else to go do that. So I already know about the project from the beginning. But I can also, with confidence and with a knowledge base and an experience, say this is what the numbers really are. This is what you ought to be looking at. These are the numbers that I'm seeing, and here's why. And then you can move on from there. And so
what I'm hearing you say is that your approach is to create teamwork and synergy between the borrower and you, because a successful end to the project is the goal, not a foreclosure or some sort of falling out or running short of funds or whatever.
Yeah, we absolutely don't want properties back. We will bend over backwards to help our clients make good decisions and keep them out of trouble if we can. I mean, obviously there's times where that doesn't work. But for the most part, we really work hard to avoid those issues. And part of that is giving them good advice up front. We're a direct source lender. We're lending our own money. We have a vested interest in getting that money back. But we also have a vested interest in making money with that money, and that means making our clients happy and performing. And so getting directly involved and building a relationship with our clients from the beginning like that, we're much more hands-on than the typical hard money lender. During the course of a typical loan, I'm probably having a conversation with my borrowers, depending on the one. Some of them, they're advanced and we don't really hear from them until they sell the house or till they refinance it for a rental, whatever. But for a lot of them, I'm typically talking to my clients 4, 5, or 6 times during their loan, besides the actual upfront thing. And because they do call us directly for draws and those sorts of things, and because I actually go out to the house and see the house for the draw, I'm seeing them, I'm talking to them, I'm building a relationship. And I like that. Because I'm on the road so much, work from a cell phone, and my clients understand, hey, if you need something, call me. If there's an issue, call me. Maybe I can help. Maybe there's a roofing guy I know. Maybe there's a foundation guy I know. Whatever. I literally had a client text me last night at like 11 o'clock. Hey, I need a proof of funds letter. I'm making an offer. And so he got a proof of funds letter in the middle of the night.
Wow.
I don't think anybody else in my office would do that, much less anybody in anybody else's office.
Well, I can personally attest that you answer your phone all the time. The communication's there for sure, and the advice is there.
Yeah.
Which whether it's this business or any other business, take your your new car to the shop to get the brakes done.
Right.
And the guy's telling you, hey man, we got to adjust these calipers. It's going to mess these rims up, whatever it is. You can tell when someone actually gives a fuck.
Yeah.
And that's actually very refreshing because a lot of people, you can tell they're just sort of detached, dispassionate. They don't really care. And you're kind of like, wow, this deal means a lot to me. Doesn't mean anything to you. Because if this goes south, this could really mess me up.
Well, sure. And the other part about it is it's just good for people, right? I mean, I can't stand watching somebody step into a bad thing. I don't care if it's a drunk driving down the road. It's like, come on, this guy's careening to his death here. Let's see if we can help him. I'm going to try and get him some help or whatever it is. But if you have the knowledge base and you're sitting there looking at the situation and it makes sense, why not say, look, here's what I think. And it costs loans. There are times where they say, oh yeah, okay, I can't do that. Well, it cost me a loan. But and the theory is, of course, that it got me a client. They'll trust me to come back and bring another deal. And the way things usually end up, if it's not a great deal, I'll tell them, look, I'll make the loan. We very seldom just look at a property and say, just not interested. And it happens. Usually it's because it's not really a residence. It should be commercial or something. But for the most part, we don't say no to a loan. I just say, look, if you want to do this, here's how much cash you're going to have to bring to put down up front to keep the risk ratios in line and everything else. And that's usually, it helps them determine that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Sure. Because that's ultimately at the end of the day, that's the thing that gets their attention is how much do I have to put down?
Absolutely. How often have you guys run the metrics, run the stats? How often are you writing repeat deals for the same
client?
For the same client.
It varies. We have some that are very consistent that we've probably made 15, 20, maybe even as many as 30 loans for. Wow. I've got a lot of 1 or 2 timers. I've got, quite a few 3 and 4 timers. We have pretty good repeat business. If we don't get repeat business, most of the time it's because someone got out of the business. They decide not to flip anymore, or they got lulled into a situation where they maybe had a business partner and they had the cash. Like I've had one guy, he's a really cool guy, and I enjoy working with him, but he got tied up with another guy that had a bunch of cash. Well, he didn't need me anymore, and that's awesome for him. And I've had other situations where I get a lot, not a lot, but occasionally I'll have a client call me and say, hey, I kind of messed up. I'm like, what? And he goes, well, I got tricked into taking this loan over here because the interest rate was lower and they're hosing me. Can you bail me out? I hear that fairly often. And also a lot of times I get hey, I was working with this other lender. I'm supposed to close tomorrow, and they just came back and said I need an additional $35,000 to close. Can you help me out? Sometimes we can. Yeah. So there's lots of situations like that. But yes, we do have quite a few repeat customers and satisfied customers, and we have I think a lot of that's because of the relationships we built.
100%. I would agree with that. I mean, that's why I asked you to join me on this, because I think you can tell, like I said already, when people are there, yes, we're here to make a living for sure. But when someone is actually trying to add value and seems like they care, because they do, that comes across. Sure. You mentioned your background as an appraiser. Is that how you started in this business?
Yep. Started as an appraiser back in the very, very early 90s. About 95, got into flipping houses. Did that for a good while, and we've just been in real estate ever since, in one form or another. I've done work. I've consulted for Fannie Mae. I've managed big portfolios for all kinds of different things along the way, but ended up at lending, using our knowledge in the appraisal industry, plus our knowledge of investing in general and construction. I've had remodeling companies before. Just the entire thing of being involved in all those aspects and facets of the business allows us to lend effectively. It allows us to give good advice to our clients. It allows us to be safe for ourselves and for them. And it puts us in a really good, strong position to really have I just tell people it's a value-added thing, right? Beyond the money, which you can get lots of places, what you're getting with us is a relationship and a value add of a true knowledge base. And not only am I going to tell you what I think the values are, but like I said earlier, I'm going to show you why, so that it's not just an ambiguous, here's the numbers and here's why, here's what you're going to do if you want to do with us. Right. It's more involved than that.
When everything happened in 07, 08, is that, well, when did you start out with DFW Investment? When did you guys come together to form that?
I got back involved with DFW in, I guess, about 2013.
Okay.
So it's been 7 years now.
That 07-08 crash that happened there, what did you notice then, and how has that helped you kind of frame other times that we've come across economically, culturally, things like that, to sort of be able to tell, hey, this is probably going to be an issue?
Well, the main thing for lenders, at least, and I guess for borrowers at the same sense, is just really understanding what's going on in the market. Like, you can't buy a house if you've got a declining market that's stagnant or whatever. You can't buy a house when it's declining, at least declining sharply, and really know for sure that you're getting a good deal, because after you buy it, it might decline another 10%. Well, that might have been all your profit, So it's important to understand and look at markers, or different aspects of the market to understand kind of what's going on. But just being conservative and not even conservative, just being smart about things, I think is where, now at that time in 07-08, I was not lending. I actually I had a pretty good size appraisal firm back in the day doing that. And, like a lot of other people in the real estate industry, just got choked out with the way things stopped, basically. So, but being able to look at a market and understand what's going on and seeing the numbers and seeing which direction things are moving, that can help you lend effectively. That can help you borrow effectively. That can help you invest effectively. So that's really the key, I think, to that, is to be cautious, know where you're stepping, and understand the path.
And obviously, you guys focus here in DFW.
We do.
So your ability to notice and discern which areas are on the rise, which areas are on the decline,
sure.
is obviously something that, you're able to really keep close track of. Have you guys considered lending in other places around the state or around the Southwest?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, I'm always interested in trying to expand, but we just never. The thing about us and in this market and our value add, as we've talked about, is our knowledge of this immediate market. The old phrase, dance with the one who brung you thing, that kind of fits here. We really know this market. We know what we're talking about. We know how to figure out if we don't know, if there's a particular little pocket, there's ways for us to figure that out, even if I'm not necessarily 100% experienced in that little pocket. We can do enough research to figure things out. Now, that being said, one of the things that makes real estate interesting to me is it's constantly changing. So some neighborhoods that are hot are dead now, and some neighborhoods that were dead for the last 30 years have just now come alive. That's really interesting to me, is to see these markets, and you get pulled into these things, and you start seeing, oh yeah, okay, this is cool. I didn't know this was going on in this market yet. I'm going to keep my eye on this, and so it helps being effective all the way around. But yeah, being involved in the market here, I think, is a big benefit to us and our clients. Stepping into Houston, San Antonio, Austin would be a lot of fun. I'd like to travel. I think there's definitely some opportunity there, but there are lenders there that know what they're doing. There is a lot of competition there, just like there is here, and we kind of lose a little bit of our solid footing because we wouldn't necessarily. Even though we understand appraisal, I don't necessarily, like, you could hand me a poorly done appraisal from Austin. I could figure out that it was not good, or it could look perfectly great, but the comps were not appropriate. So that's kind of the trap that lenders have to deal with when they're relying on other appraisers, and so it would just take some additional work to research the markets and really understand them. But one of the things that allows us to operate here is our comfort level with our knowledge.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. When I'm sure you're somewhat like me in that I like to keep my eyes on my own paper when I'm running my business or businesses, but I do also have some peripheral vision. I like to look and see what other guys are doing.
Sure.
How knowledgeable are you about the foreclosure rates and the failure rates with other hard money lenders who you compete against? How often certain outfits allow guys to overstep and bite off more than they can chew, and then there's 3 foreclosures over in Preston Hollow right now, right next to each other, all over $1 million, all that have been sitting there for like 6-8 months trying to be sold by a certain hard money lender that shall not be named here, but that I'm very familiar with because I've walked through 2 of those and just been like, who approved this floor plan?
What were they thinking?
What in the hell is going on here?
Yeah, I do try to kind of stick to my own business to a certain degree, but having knowledge in the market and understand what's going on is I think important. And I know that there's some lenders out there that when this COVID stuff hit, a lot of lenders just kind of rolled up and said, we're just going to kind of sit tight. We're not going to do anything. There's other lenders who kept going, and there's lenders that even when things got kind of rough, and slower back in late 18 and during 2019, they were making loans that I probably wouldn't have touched. But they were making loans, and I think sometimes their foreclosure rates are a good bit higher than other lenders.
Yeah.
So again, making good decisions, it all, you can give a borrower a funding on a bad deal and they may still pull out of it. There's always that possibility. Maybe they're just heavy in cash and they'll just buy their way out of it and you end up not having to take the house back. But on average, you make a bad loan, you're probably going to end up not doing as well. But it always leaves a bad, if you just allowed someone to step in the shit, as they say, they're going to have a bad flavor in their mouth, a bad taste in their mouth about that. And
do you think there's outfits whose business model is making bad deals so they can foreclose?
I hate to think that's the case. I figure it probably
We live in a real world.
Yeah. I think that there probably are people that don't make any bones.
I've seen it,
that.
man. Straight up seen it.
Yeah.
This does not make sense. What's going on here?
Why would you lend on this?
Yeah, and obviously the regulations at your level, what you're doing are they're nowhere near as stringent as they are in other sectors.
It's very much buyer beware kind of situation. I mean, as a lender, if it's your money, if you want to hand it to someone to do a deal, and whether it's a good deal or not, I mean, that's your business, right? And there's a lot of investors who don't know what they're doing. There are smaller, like individual one-offs that are using their IRA to fund a deal. And, you hear about these guys doing a loan without any kind of appraisal, without any kind of cash down, without any this, without any that, no fees this, no fees that, and they're just throwing this money out there. Well, I mean, that's risky.
Yeah.
That's a level of risk that we're not going to do.
Right.
And so it's just a bad, I view it as a bad thing. But now whether their intent is to do that so they get the property, I mean, look, if you've thrown a bunch of money in the deal, but you don't have any idea what it's worth and whether your risk ratios are proper or not, you stand just as good a chance of losing the money as the investor does. I mean, you really have to have a grasp of all this stuff.
Sure.
So, to answer your question, I think that there probably are some people out there that like to, or at least their business model may be, hey, if we get the property back, great.
Yeah. I've seen it for sure firsthand. Not been experienced in it, but just seen other people who I know be walked down a path that does not make sense. Explain for us risk ratio and the importance of the entire appraisal background that you do have in terms of how it sets up your clients for success. Because those numbers are hard numbers. Right. I mean, there's not a lot of way. People think there is, like, oh, can you fudge this here, fudge this there?
Oh, you're so close.
How does that type of thing? You have a level of integrity to that you have to adhere to, or you lose your reputation. Can you kind of educate us a little bit on how all that works?
Well, I mean, the first thing I tell people is, look, most hard money lenders work on a 70% of ARV ratio. They'll typically lend 70, sometimes as much as 75% of ARV, and that's a repaired value. That ratio works for a couple of different reasons, but the way I kind of tell my clients, if you're out in front of a house and you need to make a pretty quick decision about whether this is something you want to spend any more time on trying to figure things out, I say use the rule of 70. Now, this comes with some caveats because the market's been so tight here that 70 is not really realistic right now, so I'd say 75. But what I tell my clients is if you can buy it and repair it for 75 cents of the dollar or less of the ARV, then that's a deal that you really need to look a lot harder at and see if you can figure out how to make it work. If you're going to spend more to purchase, we call it hard cost. The cost of purchase plus the cost of repairs in my industry, or what I call is hard costs. The hard costs, if they end up costing you more than about 70 to 75 cents on the dollar, you really need to think, okay, this probably isn't for me. And I get people that are excited. Oh, look at this deal. This is awesome. And I'm like, dude, you're in at 85 cents on the dollar here. You can't make any money. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, what about everything else you have to spend money on? Your profit here is zero. What I kind of tell people is, generally speaking, hard costs, if you can keep them around 70 cents on the dollar or 70%, the soft costs, that's your financing, your other fees, your utilities and whatnot, those are typically going to run somewhere between 15 and 18%. What's left is 13 to 15%. Well, that's the target range for the profit that we tell our clients they should try to shoot for, 13 to 15%. So if any two of the cost factors, the soft costs or the hard costs, if those go up, they obviously have to reduce your profit. I tell my clients to look at profit on a percentage basis and not a dollar basis, because if you're making 15% of a $100,000 house, you're bringing 15 grand home after the fact. Okay, that sounds good. And a lot of investors are like, oh, that's awesome. This is my first deal. I'm glad to put 15 grand in the bank. Okay, great. But if you're doing the same thing on a $600,000 house, if you're putting 15 grand in the bank on a $600,000 house, it's the same money that goes in your bank, but you've risked a lot more. You've put a lot more cash up out front. Everything about it's more, right? The repairs are going to cost more because it's a nicer house. Everything about it. So I tell people, don't get lulled in by the dollar you're going to put in your pocket. Think in terms of percentage. So 13 to 15%, or 12 to 15% is kind of what we tell people to shoot for. And that's why the 70% thing makes a lot of sense. Now, on the backside, if we've got a buyer who wants to rent, want to buy a house and keep it for rental, if we lend and keep them at 70%, well, then when they refinance with a conventional lender, they're going to be pulling in somewhere about 75 cents on the dollar as their refinance. Well, what that extra 5% will allow them to do is to refinance without having to bring, they can pay some closing costs out of that 5% without having to bring more money to the table. And so it makes the transition from hard money to conventional lending a lot smoother, again, if the ratios are proper up front. So that there's a reason why these numbers all play together. It's just like anything else, 2 and 2 always equals 4. Well, we didn't just pull the number 70 or 70% out of a bucket. It has a legitimate functionality in the market and the way things play together.
Sure.
And so, even back before I really knew much about lending, I was an appraiser. I bought a house back in 2003, 2004. Things were going good, and obviously because I know a lot of lenders, a lender that was a client of mine did my loan deal, and I said, look, I don't want you stretching ratios to try and get me into a house I can't afford. I said, people a lot smarter than me came up with these ratios, and I'm sticking with it. I just want to be smart about this. They have those ratios and reasons, and whether I understand it or not, it doesn't matter. They're there for a reason. That's what I'm sticking with. So that's my thoughts on the way the numbers all play together.
When a first timer or a newbie pulls up into a neighborhood, oh wow, they start seeing all this new construction around, and they're grasping at what is that ARV, that after renovation or after remodel value. What is your recommendation to them on how to take some info, some data in, average it out, come up with something that's reasonable? Because we live in a real world, and I talk to people all the time. I found this property. It's in this neighborhood. The sky is the limit. And, you can already tell they're emotionally tied to this property, and you try to tell them, oh man, you've got to divorce yourself from those emotions if you want to be successful. But they don't listen. How do you kind of, the Cliff Notes version, the summary version of how do you arrive at that reasonable ARV number? And
I think so in the appraisal business, the primary way we come up with value is, we call it the market approach, the market sales comparison approach. There's different ways to call it. But what you're doing is you're looking at comparable homes that sold recently in the market and saying, okay, that's what these sold for. That's more than likely what mine will sell for, plus or minus. The problem, I think, a lot of times is you see a house and you think, well, the first thing they do is they go and look at the highest sales in the neighborhood, and they'll find a a house that's like, you might be doing a 2,500 foot house, but they'll find a comp, and a lot of people get lulled into using dollar per foot numbers. Oh, these houses are selling for $185 a foot. So this house is worth $185 a foot. But if they're looking at houses that are, like, if you're doing a 2,500 foot house and you see, obviously the smaller the house, maybe not so obviously, the smaller the house goes, the more per foot they sell for, because there's a land component that's not affected by square footage.
Right.
There's a lot of other stuff too. So what happens is, the smaller the house, the higher the dollar per foot number. Well, let's say you're doing a 2,500 foot house. Well, you find a bunch of 1,800 foot houses that are selling for $185 a foot. Magically, you think your house is worth $185 a foot. Well, that's not comparable. You need to stay in your size range. You need to stay in your age range. Be realistic. If you're going to try and skimp on your budget, and you look at this house down the street that's sold for whatever the price is, and it's been completely knocked out like a new home, you need to understand you're probably not going to get there, right? So there's that's the main thing. I just make sure that if your house looks like a duck, make sure that you're looking at other ducks.
And make sure it quacks like one,
make
too.
Make sure it quacks, and waddles.
We've talked about, like, the soft costs that a lot of people don't consider. Mm-hmm. But what would you say is one of those soft costs that's the most hidden, that people really, like, you have to remind people over and over, different people, you're always having to bring up one of those soft costs that people just don't consider? Is it like contingency funding? Because we're going to talk about subcontractors and that whole piece, which is complex enough on its own. Is there one that jumps out at you?
There's utilities. Yeah. I think that's one that, not that they're crazy expensive, but I think that's...
Water ain't free.
No, it's not. And, if one of your guys leaves the hose bib open all weekend after they leave, all of a sudden you got a $400 water bill, and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, we got winter, and it drops to 20, and we burst pipes.
Freeze the pipe. Yeah.
Or hell, we get a tornado like October. Mm-hmm. And who knows? Hopefully your builder's risk was comprehensive.
Right. No doubt. And so insurance is really important. I think a lot of people, this is not necessarily an unexpected cost. I would assume that everyone expects to have insurance on their home. But it's important to have the right kind of insurance. A vacant builder's risk policy is critical when you're got a vacant house that's under construction. So it's real important to have the right insurance. But as far as an unexpected soft cost, I think a lot of times they just don't factor in what it really costs to borrow money. I think the biggest one, the biggest unexpected for most investors, honestly, I believe, is probably their construction costs. They end up going over budget. They didn't think, oh, well, this or that, or they find out something. You do get lucky. I had one house that I kind of thought I was going to have to replace the AC, but for whatever reason, I didn't know for sure, and it turns out it was an amazing system. I got lucky, right? I just got lucky. It could have been the other way around.
Yeah. It most often is. Yeah, it's most often the other way around. Well, that leads right into what I wanted to talk about, which is, I think we keep saying, oh, this is the most complex part of the process, but I mean, every part of this is complex. Finding the right deal, finding the right lender, finding a lender who is going to partner with you and not just leave you out there stranded. But then actually executing the scope is, boy, I mean, how do you you have people who come to you, hey, Doug, I really want to do this, but I don't know any subcontractors. What do you tell them?
I'd say, well, I'll help you the best I can. Yeah. But I generally say, as soon as I recommend the contractor, they're going to make me look like an idiot. So I generally try, especially a general contractor, I typically kind of steer away from that. I do have a few people. I'll give the name out and say, hey, call this guy, see what he has to say. And that sort of thing. But, for the most part, I can help with foundation guys, roof guys, one-offs here and there. We build a repertoire, right? Or a knowledge base or a vendor list of sorts, though it's not official. But as far as GCs and things like that, that's so hard. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I still have a problem with the GC. It's a love-hate relationship for the most part.
I mean, hate quite often.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do you see deals disintegrate because of that, or get slowed down, or we gotta fire this guy, go in a different direction?
Right. Well, that happens quite a bit actually, and it's really tough to recover from that, or it can be. I mean, as we were talking before, your profit margins 12, 15% ideally, and typically a little less than that. So the second you start spending extra money, switching gears with GCs or with, contractors of any sort, that money is coming straight out of your profit. It's not coming from anywhere else. Right. So the second you start switching gears like that, it can really hurt you.
Well, yeah, you switch gears, you got to pay for work to be done a second time. Maybe you've got another month of holding costs, which is not just the note. It's all those soft costs we talked about.
Yeah.
And then the job starts dragging on because every job has a shelf life.
Time is money, and that's a killer. It can be. Mm-hmm. And if you've got a house and you're moving along pretty good and you're going to come on the market in April or May, which is ideal around here, but your contractor hoses you and all of a sudden it's August, September before you get done, depending on your pricing, you could be holding on to that till January, February. Mm-hmm. That's not the case, I think, in this immediate market, at least in the sub $300,000 or $400,000 range. But it can happen. So timing is important for lots of reasons, not just because it's more money out of your pocket, but it's when are you hitting the market? And I'd be curious as investors. I'm sure there's some investors that sold their houses right in January, February before COVID hit, and they were probably thanking their lucky stars. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I got out of that.
Right.
And then now come to find out, well, there's a shortage, so things are going for more than they should be. All of a sudden, and the days on market has dropped in most markets. The sale prices have gone up in most markets. And again, this is sub 400 in that range, which is what most investors are doing. And that was really one of the differences between, say, 15, 16, 17, and say 19, is a lot of the real high-end homes that were so popular to redo around here, they weren't doing those anymore. You're talking about those $1 million houses that sit there and sit there and sit there and sit there. It's because the inventory got so much, and there's just so many buyers that can buy that price range of house. If you've got a $200,000 house, you're catching people that are moving up or just first-time buyers, and you got people that may be moving down, or even as crazy as it is to say, 300,000 is kind of in that genre of entry level of sorts in a lot of markets. So it just sounds crazy to say that, but yeah, and that's just how it is these days.
You've got a scenario where you've got an investor and they are in trouble and their contractor has hosed them or disappeared or just whatever. I mean, contracting is not easy at all. It's very difficult. You guys are there to help, right? I mean, you're going to do what you can to try to help them dig out of the hole.
I'll make some phone calls. I'll see if I can help them one way or the other. We do everything we can to help them, within reason. It's good business. It helps them. It helps us. It's just helping them helps us.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've told me stories in the past where guys have gotten into trouble and you guys have reached out like over and over and over and over and over, and they won't respond, and it's they won't. You've reached out a hand to help, and they won't reach up and take it. And what do you? I mean, at that point,
you're just left with no choice. And it's we really don't want the properties back. That's right. If we wanted to flip houses, we'd be flipping houses. We've done.
You already tried that. Yeah.
Yeah. We're doing this because this is what we want to do. We don't want the houses back. We want our clients to be happy. We want them to come back. And so, taking something like that, it just sucks.
How often do you still flip stuff here and there?
Occasionally. The one over here on Lynette was the last one that I did, and that's been a little over about a year and 2 or 3 months.
That was enough for a while.
Yeah, it's just we don't aggressively look for deals. Yeah. We don't want our clients to perceive that we're competing with them for deals, right? And we're not. We're not into that at all. It's not good business, to do that, and it's not what we do. Again, we talked about this before we were on camera. That deal kind of fell in our lap. That was a borrower. He was going to work with us. His other financial partner had to bail out basically, and he was left holding this thing, and he was going to give it up. And I said, well, let's take a look at it, and we ended up taking it off his hands. And again, it was happenstance. It made sense, and we did it. So we got lucky on that one.
Gotcha. What are some of the advantages? Because I know right now in DFW, the rental market is just exploding. I mean, we got a lot of people moving here. Some can qualify to buy, some can't, some don't want to buy now. So what's the advantage if you're an investor, you go find a property, you want to turn that into a rental? What's the advantage of securing it, locking it up, hard money in it until it's ready to refi into something conventional?
Well, yeah, that's the thing is if you're buying a house, obviously it's in a distressed situation with foundation roof or some other reason why it won't go conventional. What
are those reasons for not being able to foundation roof, no floor?
Roof. Flooring, that's a kind of a cosmetic thing, and sometimes conventional lenders can look past that. Okay. It depends on what type of loan you're getting to. There's conventional, and these all go, in my mind, they all go under conventional lending, but you've got VA, FHA, regular conventional, and there's a lot of others that kind of fit in that category.
Right.
And like FHA houses really have to be in pretty good shape because that's the way FHA rolls, and same thing with VA. Whereas a conventional lender, and even FHA, I don't think they necessarily care about floor coverings. That's a cosmetic thing, and it factors into the value, and that's what they care about. But as an example for FHA, health and safety are big deals. So exposed wires are a no-no. And that sort of thing, dangerous situations. Another thing that's another no-no for FHA would be things like defective paint on the exterior of a house, any kind of exposed wood that would allow rot or termites and that sort of thing. That's a big no-no. So there are things that different lenders care about. But the big ones that they're going to say, look, this needs to be fixed before we lend is a roof, if it's really bad, foundation, obviously, and things like that. There's a flood. Flood zone's typically not a problem, but you're going to have to pay insurance. That's something that everyone ought to consider. And so there's just lots of factors, but the two big ones I think are foundation and roof.
So I mean, if you find something and it's worth buying to turn it into a rental, there's enough value there. There's going to be some part of that structure that's too fucked up to finance conventionally, most likely.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I had a guy call me yesterday. He was buying a package of 15 townhomes, and he was paying market value for them. And he said, well, I just want to talk to you about hard money. And I was like, well, listen, if you're paying full market for these things, if we're lending 70 to 75 cents on the dollar on these properties, that means you're bringing 25 to 30% down, right, plus closing costs.
Yeah.
Why not just go to a conventional lender? You might be able to bring less to the table, and then you won't be left with the refinance process into a long-term loan after the fact.
Why did he call you first?
Just because I think he had in his head, these are investment properties. I'm an investor. I need hard money lending. Now, the reasons to call a hard money lender, if you've got to close them quick, that's something a conventional lender typically is going to have a little problem with. If there are obviously repairs that need to take place. Now, another thing, too, is depending on the borrower's financial situation, some conventional lenders can look at the income on a property and actually consider it income instead of a debt, and it works into their whole ability to borrow. But it may be that the lender needs to season that for a while, right? We need to see 6 months of rental on this before we can consider it income, and before we can do your loan, we need to consider it income. So, having a hard money loan for that period of time to allow it to season, to get the repairs done, and then allow it to season for a few minutes is one of the ways, to use hard money effectively. And hard money really, ideally, is really just a way for people to buy houses with less cash out of pocket. That's kind of why I tell people the real effective way to use a hard money lender is to get into a house with as little cash out of pocket as possible.
Will you write a deal for somebody who wants to do an owner-occupy for a year?
That's okay. I mean, that's really no different than a rental for us. But we have a 12-month. Our typical note is 12 months. So they've got 12 months to refinance or move out, or sell it or refinance it. So if they want to own or finance someone, they're going to need to find other financing on the property. We won't hold it long term. And plus, the hard money rates are not appropriate. You can't make any money on an owner finance deal using hard money as the basis of it. Yeah. You need to find a better deal. But we do buy notes. We buy owner finance deals, and we help clients if they're interested in selling a house, owner finance for whatever reason. Maybe they want to do less work to it. Maybe it's an area that they know they can sell owner finance for more, And that's kind of how we cut our teeth back in the 90s. We sold a lot of houses owner finance.
Interesting.
And it's, it's funny, we kind of got away from that, but that's really it's still a good way to sell a house. And
explain the advantages of that.
Well, from an investor standpoint, you can, typically do a little bit less to the house, and you don't have to totally knock out a house to get it sold, because someone's interested in the house and they can get financing they might not otherwise be able to get. Hey, great deal. It's an easy sell, right? And so there's the advantage of making it easier to sell and to be able to maybe do a little less to the house. Now, these houses typically do have to stand up on their own in an appraisal process. So I'm not talking about selling junk houses or anything like that, or torn up or dysfunctional. But you may not have to go put those brand new cabinets in this one. Maybe you can paint the cabinets and make the kitchen look nice without really, really knocking it out. Right.
Sure.
So there's advantages to that. And then, like I said, we can help our clients basically generate an ideal owner finance note, at which point when they close that note, we will buy it from them and they can cash out and go down the road. And so it's a way to kind of consider doing some houses that might not otherwise been ideal for an investor flipper, so, and there's all kinds of different varieties of owner finance stuff and ways different guys do it.
Sure.
Some guys find a house, they find a buyer, and then they put the two together, or they know somebody wants a house, and then they try to figure out how to owner finance it for them. There's all different levels of that.
Gotcha.
So,
what are the mistakes that you see people making most often? Just their expectations are out of whack, even after you've explained the numbers, even after you've explained we got to be hitting this percentage profit. You got to reconsider that ARV. You got to really reconsider that reno budget.
Yeah, ARV and repair budgets. Honestly, the big sticking point these days is, I think repair budget just needs to be realistic. And we have clients, and fair enough, we have clients that are very talented craftsmen, and that's what they do for a living. And they've already got the materials literally sitting in a storehouse, left over by surplus or whatever. So their actual, if you really looked at their costs between their free labor to themselves, which I think everyone should value their labor as regular, but the way they look at it is it's free labor to themselves, and they've already got like new windows sitting in a warehouse ready to go, and they've got 3,000 square feet of the flooring they're going to use already, so it's no brainer, right? Well, the way lenders work is we've got to lend based on a retail cost of those repairs. So if it costs you $5,000 to get the house done, that's awesome. More power to you. You're going to make more money. But when it comes to lending, we have to look at the actual retail cost of that realistically. Because as lenders, it's the same thing with insurance. You have to look at the worst case scenario, right? If you get abducted by aliens tomorrow, what am I going to have to sell this house for to get my money back out of it?
Right.
Well, I'm going to sell it to another investor. Well, they're going to need to get their money back out of it and some profit. So the repair budget has to be realistic. So that's one of I think the biggest mistakes is that we just need our clients to be realistic about costs. And it also sucks if they don't set aside enough money, they don't have enough money, and they don't have enough in their budget, and they get 75% of the way done, and then it just sits there.
Yeah. And they can't finish, and they're trapped.
It's a nightmare.
How much are you normally micromanaging their plans? You ask them, hey, you've got this property. I want to see what it is exactly that you're going to do. Are you taking them all the way down to the doorknobs that you want specifics?
Yeah, sometimes. Now, if we have experienced clients that are, like we've got one client, I don't know how many times he's borrowed from us, and he's buying rentals, right? We don't mess with him, right? He knows what he's doing. He's doing the same thing he does on the last 20. We don't have to mess with him too much. He gives us a repair budget, and as long as it makes sense, we do look at it, of course. We're not just going to take their word for it. It's got to make sense. But we don't mess with those guys. Now, if I've got another client who had a house that he wanted to value at a certain thing, and he wanted a certain loan and all this. Well, this particular house had a guest quarters that was detached and above a garage at the back of the house. Well, it's not living area. It's separate. And I said, in order to make this loan and do the value you want, you're going to have to open up the second floor and bring a staircase down to the first floor on the main house so that becomes living area, because otherwise the value is not there. And he said, okay, great. And I could kind of tell he's paying lip service, like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, finally we get far enough along, and I'm like, hey, I still don't see any progress on making that living area. And he's, I was talking to my guys, that's going to be too expensive, too complex, it's just not going to work. And I said, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do then. I'm going to stop everything. and we're going to look at what it's going to be worth now. And if you have any money left over, then I'll continue funding your repairs. If not, then you're on your own. You know, I've had guys come to me and say, "Hey, we were looking at the foundation, decided we just tore the house down." Okay, maybe call first.
Yeah,
you know, let's talk about it for a few minutes.
That's a lofty decision to make.
I'm not saying you were wrong, but I'm saying you probably there's some details you need to understand.
Yeah,
you know, so every day is a surprise.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. How often, can you break it down by percentage? How often your deals are on single family and how often they're on multifamily facilities? I mean, obviously there's a lot more of one than there are of the other.
Yeah, but almost everything we do is single family. Okay. We have some duplexes from time to time, and we'll lend up to fourplex size. We do not get into apartments or commercial property. It's just not our wheelhouse. So, I mean, occasionally we do some duplexes. I would say probably less than 5% of our loans are duplexes.
Gotcha.
You know, and it's really not any reason other than if you look at the overall population of residences on this planet or in our market, you know, maybe about 5% of those are duplexes.
Right.
It's just a natural progression.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, but they're, you know, we do them.
Yeah. What about new construction? I mean, how often are they have you got an investor going in, taking a something small all the way down to the dirt and then coming back with all the way brand new?
I've got one right now. The guy struggled to get it done, but he's awesome. He's stuck with it, and he's got a really pretty new house, and he had a cash offer in the first 3 days or first 2 days of listing it. So
what was that price? What's that price point approximately?
That price point about 175.
Okay.
This is over in Tarrant County.
Gotcha.
Real happy for the guy. Real proud of him. And you know, he bought a little shack, and he was originally going to add on to it.
Okay.
And then they started working on it and ended up getting torn down.
Because it just started falling apart in his hands
and
almost.
This guy had never built a house before, so part of his learning curve was learning what the city's going to need. He had contractor problems too. You know, I think anything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
But he embraced adversity and made it all the way through.
He stuck with it, and really proud of him, real happy for him.
For our first timers who are like, okay, so I really do want to get into this. I want to start. Like you said, one strategy could be to start wholesaling, start building up your bankroll. But if they've got a bankroll, say they've got 30 grand sitting around, couple of things that you would recommend. I'm sure one of them would be find something that's close to where you live.
That's a good idea at the beginning. I would also say start with smaller projects. Don't start off buying the burnout that's got a slab and a couple of brick walls. You know, get a house that needs some heavy cosmetics, maybe a new roof, something like that, or foundation. I would tell people don't shy away from foundation work. You know, foundations can be repaired, and the worse the foundation is now. This goes with a grain of salt, right? Don't buy a house that's falling off in a ravine.
Right.
But if it's cracked, don't be scared of that. Don't believe that you can't sell it. You can. You know, foundation repairs are done to a lot of houses in this market. It's very common. And frankly, it's the way for an investor to get a deal. You know, you just need to factor it in. It's all numbers, right?
Yeah, I mean, the entirety of the new 635 corridor pretty much needs foundations all the way along there. Yeah,
I mean,
a lot of them got big settlements too.
Cottonwood Valleys in Irving is a really pretty neighborhood and some of the worst soils maybe in the country.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy what happens in there.
It's very odd.
So it's just part of our market here.
Sure, and it doesn't have to be a house. Think it. What if you got somebody who's got 20, 30,000, and he finds maybe a condo or a townhouse, something small that just maybe
that's great too.
Take down a demising wall, change out my countertops, change out my plumbing and electrical fixtures, and be on with it.
Sure. One of the you know, there's things you got to be aware of in each one of those venues, right? Like if you're looking at a high-rise condo someplace, Turtle Creek or Northwest Highway or whatever. I mean, it might seem like a great deal, but as an investor and a rehabber, you're restricted by elevators and access and the times that you can work on the property. You know, you got a house out in the country, you can work on it 24/7 if you want. Screaming, you know, air compressors and saws and the whole 9 yards. You
blasting AC/DC all day, all night.
Try that in a high rise on Turtle Creek and see how that goes.
That will not fly. Do you have an index or at least some experience if someone comes to you and wants to purchase a property in an HOA? Because a lot of people don't realize, this HOA.
Be careful.
got
Also, historic districts, downtown McKinney, downtown whatever, Swiss Avenue,
Winnetka Heights.
Yep,
Oh
Winnetka.
Man,
Yep, that'll eat your lunch if
Absolutely.
if all of a sudden you're having to buy windows that are 4 times as expensive as you expected.
Or wait 2 months to get approval to build a garage or just whatever it is, and then sit down at planning and zoning down at City Hall all day and wait for your hearing time.
There's just so many things about this business that you have to think about, and it's not surprising at all, even for a very seasoned person, to miss something. It can happen, and it sure is rewarding when it's done, though. I mean, my favorite part of flipping houses is when someone is in love with the house that you did, and they've bought into your vision, and they can't wait to raise their family there. That's really cool. That was always my favorite part of flipping.
Most definitely.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. I mean, it's a tough business to take on as a side hustle.
Yeah, it is. The people that consistently make good money at this is what they do. It's not a hobby. It's not a, I work at the hospital 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and I'm going to try and flip this house on the side.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you don't keep eyes on the guys, and I don't know. I mean, if your GC's not like blood,
right?
How do you know what's going on all day?
That's the key, is having a GC. Like, I'm too busy to try and flip a house and have a really strong hand in the overall overseeing of the property. I'm just not going to do it. If I can't buy a deal and make money on it and hire a GC to do it properly and manage it for me, I'm just not going to do it. I don't have the time. It's not feasible for me to consider that. So having a GC for someone that's busy is really important. Now, I have clients that they've built portfolios of rent houses almost overnight. And like one guy, he is awesome too. I really enjoy talking with this guy. But he's learned how to do everything. He learned how to cut and polish granite so he could put his own granite slabs in. Saved a ton of money. He buys surplus granite now and does it himself. He installs his own AC systems now. He taught himself how to install ACs. All this stuff he's learned how to do on his own, and he saves a massive amount of money, but he's on the house every day. If it's hot, he's out there sweating. And if it's cold, he's out there freezing. But he's there. And he's making it happen for those guys, and I really admire that. And he's lucky to be able to do that.
Is he? And those are his properties. He's buying them.
He's keeping them for rentals. Yeah,
he's turning them into his own rentals.
Literally building a rental portfolio.
How long is it taking him from when he takes down the property to when he can refinance it into conventional?
I think he's usually in and out of those deals in about 2.5, 3 months. It depends on the complexity. Some of them it's just cosmetics, and he's a lot faster, and some of them it's hey, we're going to do this. We, I had a partially converted garage. We're going to go ahead and make it nice. That sort of thing. So it just depends on, the individual project.
Gotcha. And for some of our first timers who they're interested, man, I've been listening this whole time. This definitely sounds like something I want to do. I got 30 grand laying around. My credit, it's not that great.
Well, that's another thing. For hard money lenders, most of us don't really consider credit that much. Now, we do require, with an application, we require a credit report, and we need to see your cash position, that sort of thing. Those are important to us. But keep in mind that we're an asset-based lender or lending process. So what we're confident in the numbers of the house, or our risk ratios are based on the house. Everything that we do is based on the real estate. So the credit is... you roll in with a 500, we're going to start asking questions or whatever. But really what we're looking at on a credit, for at least for us, is we're going to look for things like judgments, liens, other kind of legal issues or encumbrances that may allow some outside third party to cloud your title. That becomes an issue. Other than that, the credit is not super critical. So, if you have the cash and you're interested, and oddly enough, a lot of investors don't have good credit. I don't know what's the cause and what's the effect there, but long story short, we see quite a bit of that.
Well, maybe they try things and they're not afraid to fail.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people living in this world who are afraid to fail, and they never take a risk. So.
And listen, I go, we attend some investor meetings where love the meeting. It's always educational. It's a great value, et cetera, et cetera. but you got a room full of tire kickers. The guys are terrified to actually pull the trigger on a deal. And every once in a while, someone will do one, and then they'll get up and tell everyone, "Hey, I finally did it, and you guys should too. There's nothing to be worried about," And it's cool to see, but it's like it's terrifying for a lot of people. And for me, I've been in real estate my whole life, basically.
Right.
It's like,
old hat.
This is old hat.
Yeah.
But for the average person, especially a newbie to the investor world, buying a house is terrifying. And I know, like, I have good friends that are attorneys and doctors and professionals that they deal with stress all the time, and they go to buying a house and they start losing their hair.
Yeah.
It's like it just flips them up.
Keeps them up at night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's rough. So I get it. I get being scared. It's risky.
Yeah.
But with risk comes reward.
Hey, fortune favors the brave, man.
Yeah, it does.
Do you guys offer like a frequent flyer type? You get a guy in there, he knocks one down, comes back for a second, comes back for a third. Once he gets to like his fourth or fifth.
We try to incentivize repeat customers and experienced customers and that sort of thing. Before COVID hit, we had just developed some pretty nice, programs like that. Then once COVID hit, and probably 70% of our, maybe 80% of our competitors just pulled out of the market. We didn't, not knowing what the market's going to do, we kind of said, you know what, we're going to kind of stick with our traditional tried and true program that we've had for, the whole time, right? 13, 14 years. Yeah. This is what we're sticking with. I still think it's one of the best programs out there. But yes, the short answer is yes. We have repeat clients. We offer some options for them to kind of incentivize them and make things a little better for them, because we appreciate the repeat business.
Sure. Yeah, we're going to have a new BC, right? Instead of before Christ, it's going to be before COVID. Yeah, that's going to be, hey, it's the new normal. Well, man, if someone's listening to this, they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect?
Reach out. My cell, Doug Phillips, 214-912-7701. Our website, our company name is DFW Investor Lending. You can find us at dfwinvestorlending.com or dfwil.com for short.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. It's good to see you again. Yep. Anybody listening, if you forgot that, you can always hit me on Instagram, Jess at the Northwest. Jess from the Northwest. I don't even know my own Instagram handle. I'm trying to get with the flow here. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I did. Doug brings it every time. What a great guy. I can't wait to do business with him again. Please like, subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them below. If you want to do business, hit us up in the link below as well, and we'll see you next time.